Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corman. And joining me today is Josh Muskin. He has 12 plus years of digital marketing. He is VP of Sales and Marketing at Web Mechanics. He served as a marketing advisor to hundreds of marketing leaders from startups to Fortune 500. He's also a husband, father, Ironman triathlete, which is pretty cool. And he's currently working on breaking his personal record of solving a Rubik's Cube in less than 38 seconds. Holy smokes. I can't solve a Rubik's Cube in like a year or multiple years. Or I actually have never solved a Rubik's Cube except when I got really creative and peeled off the stickers and then replaced them. Hey, I got frustrated. I was done. I think my husband could probably do it. Not me.
That'd be should be fun.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of my favorite topics. One of them is AI. And then, of course, digital marketing, which I believe is very effective and efficient. So I love that. So let's talk a little bit about how is AI impacting content strategy for business to business brands, B2B brands?
There's been a lot. And we've actually now seen two sides of it already. So when things like ChatGPT and its competitors, I suppose, became very popular, one of the first things that people did is they used it to generate content. And they just started writing 5 blog posts an hour and pumping them out. And they started to see some organic traffic come back to those. But like with all things, when you try to exploit a system, eventually it kind of catches up with you. So we got to see the wild, wild west version of that for a little while, and people using it to just, hey, ChatGPT, write me a blog post about cybersecurity. They would publish it, and that was kind of the end of the deal. And in March, mid-March of this year, Google released a content quality update that basically took all that content and removed it. And so you had a bunch of companies that really leaned heavily into that start to really see the downtrend. The timing of that was interesting timing because at the same time they got rid of a lot of that content, they introduced their own AI result on the SERP. They call it SGE, or Search Generative Experience. And they were like, we don't want your AI content. We want our AI content. And that's been a really big shakeup on the organic side, mainly because, one, it's a totally new way people are ingesting information when they do a search. And two, it's very clear that the way that they ranked traditional SEO for all of the years leading up until this one is not the same way that they pick and choose the content that ends up being referenced in that section. So for the first time really in 20 some odd years, we have a secondary set of ranking criteria to learn and to optimize against.
I have to say, I love my AI generated search results, the search generative experience in Searchlight. I turned that baby on and I love it. I've been using it, I think, almost as soon as it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they said something like 90 some odd % of their search results have an SGE result.
Yep. And it was personal Gmail only up until April. The 1st of April, they started rolling it out to Google Apps and other people using Chrome or using Google on some other browsing window. And so now it's becoming a much more significant part of the result. And the only variance now is really how much of the screen it takes up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. But I will say that I like how you talked about how people paid a little bit for trying to game the system. Stop gaming the system. Write real content that has real value. Create real content that has real value. And guess what? People show up. Every time you try and game the system, you lose. I just don't get it.
It's been that way forever. I mean, there were link wheels back in 2010 and not to main directory links for a couple of years thereafter, right? There's always something that ends up getting pulled back. And the valuable content comment is an important one, because if you think about, say, traditionally how you would optimize a page for SEO, you'd be putting keywords in headlines, body copy, and anchor text links and footers, and really just try to get it in as many relevant places as you can. But when you really look at the content that's ranking in SGE, I don't want to say it has none of it, because by nature you're going to be writing keywords related to your content, certainly, but they tend to be really big pieces of content, as if they searched their keyword, clicked the 10 links that came up first, and then wrote all of them combined and slightly better. They answer significantly more questions than they used to directly, even think like Q&A or FAQ style. They are completely comprehensive about an individual topic. It's something that you're actually like proud to write and publish on the internet versus like, that's going to get the plural version of my keyword ranking.
Well, and I think that the interesting thing about so I always consider that the Brian Dean school of blog writing, because he always had those really big, thorough posts with all the different pieces and things like that. So before he sold Backlinko to, who did he sell it to again? Now I'm trying to remember. Oh well. But I think, again, yeah, it's value added content. And so I do a lot on podcasting, on email marketing. There's not a ton of new content on it, but there is my take and my experience and my tips and the way I word it and the way that it comes naturally to me that does provide a differentiator over AI generated content. What are you telling your guys' clients, or what are you doing for your clients in the B2B space when it comes to content generation?
So there is actually a place for the AI piece to this, like the using ChatGPT for content. And what we've started to do with a significant amount of success is to understand that you still have to have someone who knows what they're talking about write the thing. But keeping that in place. But we now have this extra tool to make sure that we're being as comprehensive as we can. One of the things that's clear about the information presented in the SGE experience is they match very well what they say about a general and broad topic to your level of intent, given your search history, given what you've looked at before and what you've done. So where you may have previously just written one piece of content that answered the what is this, how does it affect me type questions, you're now doing that for various different levels of somebody's intent and awareness of a product or a service or a solution. So when you're doing that, what's really nice is to be able to construct kind of a persona. You have your advanced user, your intermediate, your beginner, and as you're drafting your content outline, you're asking ChatGPT or Bard or Gemini, and you're saying, what would this person get from this outline that I have? And what did I not include that I should? And what have my 3 competitors included that I have not here? And you build effectively the world's greatest outline. You now know that you're going to cover all the major topics, all the minor topics, you're going to hit all the key points within those. And then you get someone who's been in the industry for a long time to write and expand on each of the bullet points within that outline. And so you get the benefits of using AI for a functional reason, for research, for perspective. But to your point, you get to put your own spin on that. You get to talk about it in your voice and why your opinion on that thing is the right one for that purpose. And combining those two meets Google's mission of giving quality content to the person who wanted it in the way that they wanted it. But it also allows you to cover all of your bases in sort of that traditional and new SEO sense at the same time.
So I really like that. And a couple of things that I really, so one, ChatGPT is like, it's not copy and paste.
Right.
Okay. So I think that that's key. I think that that's something that a lot of people are overlooking because they're rushing.
Mm-hmm.
They're going fast. Okay. This sounds good. Okay. So if it has the word delve in it or ethos, AI wrote it. Because it loves to delve into things whenever I use it. But again, I think, having someone that knows what they're talking about is important.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you're using AI systems, you got to know enough to ask the right questions, right? So you need to know enough to put some of that input in to get the output you're looking for. And, again, I used to laugh when I was a student in college or my MBA. There was one class I was in, it was my MBA, and I said, he goes, what are you struggling with? I'm like, I haven't figured out enough of what you're talking about to even ask a question. So, because I didn't know enough to ask a question.
Right.
And so he's like, okay, let's go back to basics. And then I was like, okay. So then we figured it out. Yeah, you got to know what you're doing to ask the right questions, right? And to get the right answers from AI systems. So how is this changing digital marketing? We've got all this content now. We've got all these people making amazing content, making it harder to rank, and all the paid results are going further down the page.
There are 2 consistent kind of categories of change. One on the organic side is very positive. It's forcing people to create things that are actually valuable for a human and not for robots.txt. And in doing that, it is creating a separation between those that truly do know and those that kind of don't. And so the companies that are producing content that is actually thought leadership and is actually detailed and valuable and answers questions, they're getting that little extra multiplier advantage, which is fair and should be. To your point of needing to know how to interact with the thing to get what it is that you want back, that's what we see as the really big change on the paid media side of it all. So if organically we're getting results given to us in a way that match our level of intent and knowledge and are in sort of the Cliff Notes version, and we can delve into that as much as we'd like to. On the paid side, we're seeing kind of a reduction in control. Google and Meta are most, I don't want to say guilty, but it applies most to them, where they have taken targeting that used to be able to be very, very precise, and they've made it generally accurate at best. An easy example is Google's keyword matching for search. So it used to be that you had exact match keywords. You could only show up for this exact term. So if it was red shoes, if someone typed in red shoe, you're not showing. It's not exactly what you wrote. It was very specific. And then you had various different, more broad versions of that. And over the last couple of years, they've been like, yeah, but like maybe they did mean singular, or maybe they meant like orange shoes or beige flip-flops. That's all kind of the same. And they took something that used to be very exact and precise and make it broader. Facebook has done the same thing. They've removed targeting categories for like housing, employment, and credit categories and whatnot. So if there are three levers to pull in advertising, if there's creative targeting and then sort of conversion events that say that the good thing happened, losing the middle one is sort of where we're heading. And you see that with Performance Max. So like, give me some ads, give me a data event, trust me, the middle. And so there's this input, this extra specific input that's required from marketers to say, I don't want someone who filled out my form. I want someone who filled out my form and answered these 7 things in this exact way. That's actually what I want. So please go get me that instead of just someone who's going to fill it out and be junk. And so we as marketers on the paid side have had to say, okay, well, if we can't target with drop downs and keywords, we have to target with this data point that we have. And when you pair that with this cookie apocalypse and deprecation of third-party tracking and all this other stuff, it forces you to consider, how do I get that level of information first party directly from the people I'm interacting with and make it my targeting, such that when I can't target anything ever again because privacy lawsuits have removed that from our ability, you still have control over where these ads are showing. And so it's the technical input to get the output of that qualified lead that you want versus, on the ChatGPT side, you have to actually know how to prompt it to get the right answer. It's the same thing, but sort of serving a different purpose.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, targeting is going away and it's getting harder and harder. One of my clients was like, well, I would like to target people attending this conference in Las Vegas. And I was like, that's nice. You used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do that now. Well, can you target people that follow this Facebook page? And I was like, no. There's not enough followers
And then
that are currently visiting in Las Vegas. And I was like, no.
Right.
And it's like, no, I get the question that they're asking. It's not a stupid question by any stretch of the imagination. Because like 5 years ago, no problem. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Right?
Just click the button.
Yeah. Just pick the right buttons. I'm like, that's not an option anymore. Oh, okay. So then what do we do? And I was like, well,
it gets really interesting when you start talking about the special categories too. So we have a client in a financial space where they can only work with people who are 65 and older. But because of the industry they're in, you can't target age or household demographics or gender, or in some cases even like zip code. And so you're like, well, how can I target people who are 65 and older if I can't actually target people who are 65 and older? And it's, the example is asking on the form or some interaction on the page that's like, is this you? Are you 66 or 67 or 68? And just by them interacting with that, you can now filter and say, okay, only the people that click that button are the people I'm going to tell Facebook about or Google about. So when they go through the process of fill out the form, it'll try to find similar, but that's the only way to do it.
Well, the interesting thing on that is you can't even use some of that content in the copy. So Facebook says, trust me, right? You write the copy and I'll find people that like it and I'll start narrowing it down for you. And again, I do trust them to an extent because they have found some pretty good results for me here and there. But you can't say, are you 65 or older? Because then it's like, no, you just asked them for, identifying information. And so therefore your ad violates our policies. And it's like,
so
you gotta try and stay away from the word you.
And anything that could remotely resemble who you actually are.
Yeah.
But that's why you have to collect it somewhere else that they don't control, like the actual page you're sending them to. And we were talking the other day, and it was someone was talking about Mad Men, and they were talking about, advertising used to be cool. It used to be all about the campaign and the language and the copy and whatnot. And we are to some extent sort of skewing back towards that, because in their day, in the made up day of the show, they were like, we have billboards, we have national radio, and like that's it. So we really do have to use this to narrow to the people who are going to care about it. And if we're losing to some degree a level of targeting, we have the event that we talked about, and then we have the creative that people see and making sure it does actually resonate with them in a way that's useful. So there's sort of been a skew back to the people having a lot of success have really strong creative and really strong data sets, and the middle doesn't matter nearly as much as it previously did.
Well, I think one of the things that builds off of what you're talking about, though, is like people have been scared. Well, AI is going to get rid of copywriters. I'm like, maybe in 20 years.
Yeah. Have you read AI copy before?
But I'm like, not yet, because AI is good. It is very good. I love it for first draft, but I edit the heck out of it. Or I give it so much information that it can't really do anything wrong except like fix it up so it looks a little bit better for me. But copywriters are going to become more in demand, I think, because one, they can talk to AI, right? They can communicate, but also they have an innate understanding of the target. And if you've done the research and if you've talked to your customers, or you've really understand the problem that you're solving, you are so far ahead of everybody else. It's not even funny, because now that we can't do the targeting, you're right. The words, the imagery, it matters a ton more than ever before.
We talk about it all the time. We're like, AI in the case of copywriting is a research enhancement tool, right? It's, again, understanding who is going to see it and knowing how to ask, what is their perception of this message going to be? What's the pitfall I'm not thinking of? How would you describe these complaints or these problems to someone who's never realized that they were problems before? And then putting yourself in the shoes of that person and actually writing for them. If you really believe that AI right now can replace them, write what you think is a good headline and ask ChatGPT to write 10 more, and they all stink. Every single one of them.
I just had it do 25 subject lines. I'm like, please write 25 subject lines and some pre-headers. And I'm like, these are all horrible.
All right, well, I'll just go do that myself now. Okay, great, thanks.
I'm like, oh my gosh, these are all horrible. It did give me some ideas, so I was like, okay.
Yeah, but again, first draft, tool, not a solution. Right? It's really good for nursery rhymes for kids, but
well, I recently did, and I think it's coming before this episode, but I was like, wait, where's the order on the episodes? I was recording one of my imperfect marketing briefs that go on Tuesdays. I had it write me a nursery rhyme for what I wanted to communicate. It was actually pretty fun. And I opened up the show with that instead of my normal opening because I thought it'd be more fun.
Why not?
So it can do some cool things, but you have to know enough of what you're doing. And again, with creative becoming even more important, I know I was struggling because I was just recently launching a new version of my website, and I was really struggling. I mean, I was just staring at a cursor for like ever. And so I had AI help me with some things. And then I had my assistant look over it, and she goes, I don't understand what that means. In like 4 sections. I'm like, dang it. I thought it sounded cool. And it did. It just like made no sense. It didn't actually say anything, right? And so it's that human part, that human review is just way too important. So let's talk about, again, without targeting. So now you've got creative and you've got the data. The people that don't have the data yet, because they've been sort of phoning it in and not getting all of that data yet, right? What can they do to start gathering information to make their paid campaigns more effective?
So the first step is understanding what data you need. And you can immediately open the proverbial door and run down the hallway and talk to the first group of salespeople that touch the leads, because they already know what they have to ask, their BANT criteria, their whatever, to figure out, are these people worth my time or not? They typically have 3 or 4 questions that they lean into. The first one they ask is always the most important one. So if you're going to collect only one thing, it's probably the answer to that question. In some cases, for a lot of our B2B clients, it's size of company, amount of revenue, number of employees, that kind of thing is just a very nice binary. We want to work with you or we don't. Sometimes it's tech stack, sometimes it's amount of money spent or something, but there's usually something that is quantifiable, a yes, a no, an above or below type metric. You can say it's not all of the answers, but if they choose the wrong one here, none of the other ones matter. What the next hurdle people have to get over is they're like, well, I don't want to add more fields to my form, because more fields means lower conversion rate, and the whole house of cards falls if I add one drop down to the bottom of the form. And what we've seen is very interesting, where if you're actually asking questions that certainly at least appear that they're useful to answer, that are going to get you to that more customized quote or demo call or experience or what have you, people are happy to fill them out because they think it's going to skip the step after that, or they just have to answer all those questions anyway. On the B2C side, for example, we once worked with a window company that would only do more than 5 windows at a time. You're like, are you in the right zip codes? Do you have more than 5 windows? If no, don't even finish the rest of it. Just go away. If yes, please name, phone, email, what have you. And that made a huge difference. It went from about a 25% lead to appointment rate to a 70% lead to appointment rate, because the qualification was done then at that point. And so understanding what you need to collect, talk to sales. They're already going to tell you how to collect it. Put it on the form, but do it in like the most fun and logical way possible. Hey, we're going to ask these questions because we're going to use it in our first call to you, and you're going to get these benefits from it, and people will fill it out, no problem. Then, if that's step 2, I don't know how many steps there are. Step 3 would be making sure that you have some kind of trigger or some kind of variable in something like a Google Tag Manager to say, only fire conversion scripts if this answer is this, and this answer is that, this answer is this, whatever that filtering looks like for you. And that can be it. You can just put that trigger variable in front of those scripts and be effectively done. The results that you'll experience in the initial stages will feel weird, right? You're just you're going to be sending less data back to Google Ads and Facebook. And so on one hand, you'll see higher cost per lead just because you're dividing by a lower number, but you're also knowing that those new lead counts are the sort of good and qualified ones. And there will, in an immediate period, be a bit of a slowdown because these platforms, to them, will have experienced just a drop in conversion rate. They're like, wait, what happened? I don't know why that happened. Let me figure that out. Let me go back to learning phase or whatever I need to do. And now I got to go back and get to my numbers targets. But as they're doing that, they're starting to do it only on a set of data that has those pre-qualification fields in it. It can feel a lot more like rocket science than it is, but you're essentially just using your forms to qualify your leads in a way that feels useful to them, and then making sure that that's the only thing you measure.
And if I really want something, I'll fill out quite a few forms.
Yeah.
Or form fields, right? So you got to think about the value that you're providing. I think it all comes down to value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Value for the audience, value for your target, making sure they want you to exclude them as quickly as possible if you're not going to work with them. Nobody wants to spin their wheels and waste time with demo calls and things like that if it's not an option.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's really insightful. Thank you so much, Josh. I feel like we've covered so many different things, and hopefully we didn't scare anybody too badly with all of the ways that tech is going to help us with digital marketing as we move forward. But yes, as we get more private, we have to get more creative, and the creative definitely needs to talk to our target audience. But before I let you go, I have to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests. This show is called Imperfect Marketing because marketing is anything but a perfect science. What has been your biggest marketing lesson learned?
My biggest marketing lesson learned is that something that worked even a couple weeks ago may not be the thing to do now. Beginning of this, we talked about all the people that just went and did as much AI content as they could, and they quickly found out that maybe it wasn't the thing to do. We didn't do that, not guilty. But there are plenty of things that work for years on end that suddenly change, and being okay with that and understanding that it's going to happen no matter what you're doing or how much success you've had, and being able to read between the lines of what's coming, what's next, and make those changes is probably the most important thing.
Well, thank you again so much for your time. I totally agree with you on that. Yes, things are changing. You need to evolve with it and you need to be providing value. And I think that the one thing that doesn't change is that as long as you're providing value, people will find you and leverage what you have. So, again, thank you so much, Josh, for all of your time. I do appreciate it. As always, we will have ways to get in contact with Josh and Web Mechanics in the show notes. So be sure to check those out if you're interested in connecting with him and learning more about what they provide there. If you learned anything, and hopefully you did, it would really help us out if you would rate and subscribe from wherever you're listening or watching. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. See you next time.